Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Yes, I have been a part-timer this week, and this is my first appearance, I believe, since Tuesday. So thank you to Kevin Graham yesterday, Quinny, who joined him, Chris McElwain, and all the boys who joined Chris on the bulletin and also the match day coverage. Thank you all for doing that. We've got a great team at Acsom. But today gives me an opportunity to speak to you guys in the chat, something that often when there's a lot of big kind of subjects to discuss, we don't get around as often as we would like to actually getting you involved. So on a day like today, when other things like full-time jobs, etc., get in the way of Acsom chat, I'm going to just sit here and talk to you guys directly. Lots of other things to fill you in on, as well as the Celtic discussion points, which I'll tell you at the top of the show, and then we'll work through them. You can tell me your thoughts in the comments section, and I'll bring them up, and we'll have a good old powwow like the old days. Here we go. But there's a lot happening with the Celtic State of Mind as well, which I will give you some inkling of. Don't worry, we will always be here at 12:30. That's a pledge I made on day one of going live, and it's something that's going to remain here, but it might look a little bit better. So I'm going to tell you all about that as well, guys. I was listening in yesterday as an Acsom viewer. I was listening in my car coming home from Glasgow, and I listened into Kev Graham and Quinny not only talking about the performance against Dundee on Wednesday night, but also they were, they were getting stuck in and about the comments. And I remember at some point there was an accusation, a shocking accusation levied at the doorstep of Acsom that we were somehow in cahoots with Jungle Lion, and that there was some kind of contractual obligation that we would bring up his comment first. And Kevin admitted to that. So today, James Devine's up first. Good afternoon to you as well, James. And of course, good afternoon to Jungle Lion and all the other regulars. There's a regular tribe that come on a daily basis. Not everybody comments. I've spoken to a lot of people in the last few days who say, you know what, I listen to Acsom every single day, but they never comment. And that's an interesting thing. We all consume it in different ways. People are out there walking their dogs. People are on the treadmills. I need to do a wee bit more of that myself. You might be out on your walk and you might be coming back like I was from your place of work. I was in Glasgow, and we are looking at lots of different things happening in Glasgow, which will be Acsom related. We're at that stage now where it's time for us to kick on and make it even better than it is already. That's what it's all about. If you haven't done so already, get subscribing to the channel on YouTube. We actually we stream out on as many platforms as we possibly can. So at the moment, it's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, X, and Instagram. If Blue Sky get their act together, then we will also go out there. Oh my God, here we go. Somebody has jumped in. It's Chris McElwain, who obviously has got access to the Acsom account. He's seen me flying solo, and he said, I'm not having that.
I thought, unbelievable. You know, the boss man's on his own. What's happened? Normally reaches out and says I'm looking for a bit of company. But I thought, if you're wanting, I've got a little break. I've got my lunch break. I thought I'd jump on.
You have been working pretty hard in terms of your Acsom duties this week, Chris, so I didn't want to bother you, but it is great to have you on the show. And I'm just explaining to everybody tuning in, we are making a few tweaks to improve what we're putting out there. And what that should allow, the first thing I'm going to say, I don't want to let the cat out the bag, because there are a lot of Xerox by Xerox out there looking for ideas. I'm not going to let the cat out the bag. But what it should allow us to do is it should allow us to dedicate the 12:30 to 1:30 section of the show. There's a wee idea of what's happening, to simply talking to you guys on the comment section. Whether or not it will always be interactive by comments or phone-ins, I think we need to have a system set up in place whereby maybe you will be on the end of a phone, who knows. But obviously, we will be extending the duration of the show, and the show will be looking a wee bit different as well. Welcome back, Chris. You may or may not have heard me thanking you for all your efforts this week. There is loads to talk about. So the subjects I think that are important. Obviously, there was a big development today in relation to the Bayern Munich away game. We didn't know what the outcome would be. I I've got to admit, thought the worst. I thought we were going to get banned. There's been an update on that, no ban. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll be talking about the future of these incidents and how we can manage these incidents. And interestingly enough, Kevin McKenna and I spoke about it just yesterday in that show. This is Acsom will be on tonight. I think we need to talk about what I see as the tale of 4 left backs. It's Greg Taylor, Kieran Tierney, Jeffrey Schloop, and Adam Montgomery. I think we've also got to remember a man who wasn't really called into action the other night very much. He might have had a cold evening, but he has, in my view, still been the signing of the summer, Kasper Schmeichel. And then individual performers, Chris, I think, even though there was a disappointment of that window shutting, we're not going on about it. Kevin closed it last night. He closed it. He said, that's it. We move on. Even though there's a disappointment, I'm going to be looking at 6 players who, regardless of who you've signed or who you've not signed, if they hit top form, and there was an insight into that perhaps happening against Dundee, we will be fine and dandy. I want to look at those 6 players individually. How will we line up against Raith Rovers? How we will be able to deal with Bayern Munich on the back of Raith Rovers. Incredibly, they've not been in the same sentence, Raith Rovers and Bayern Munich, since Raith Rovers were 1-up against Bayern Munich away in 1995. I don't know if you remember that. And we'll be talking about what else Acsom's up to, and that includes Johan Mjällby in 3 weeks' time. So, Chris, welcome back to the show. We'll start off then. I'm going to throw it out to the comments. I'm going to throw it out to the audience who come into the show every single day and keep us company and talk Celtic and talk amongst themselves and argue and fall out and throw the toys at the pram. And that's just the Acsom contributors. And I'm going to ask the question around the Ultras, right? So tune in tonight, 6 o'clock with Kevin McKenna. We talk about the Ultras. Kevin's got a really great view on it, I've got to say, in that we've just started calling the Ultra group something different. And the fact that he believes, and actually got me thinking, there has always been that hardcore in the support. They've just always kind of presented themselves in a different way, Chris.
Yeah, do you know, I've never. First of all, let me apologise to anybody who's probably fed up seeing me this week. I literally just had some free time, and I thought I'll come on and support the boss man. But if anyone wants me to drop off, just say so in the comments.
Isn't the boss man Springsteen? Is he not the boss man?
Well, depends whether you can get up there and dance with Courtney Cox or not. But no, going back to your point, I'm not a fan of the word ultras for a start, because the ultras for me always reminds me of the kind of 90s. The fans that you used to see in Serie A or South America, the ones that would chuck the scooters off the upper tier of the stadium and stuff like that. I always felt the word ultra was a little bit, certainly this was my perception, was a little bit aligned to hooliganism in the way it was perceived. And that's possible. That certainly is not the way I view the, what we're terming the Celtic Ultras at the moment. So I think of the Ultras as the Green Brigade. And if we're talking about the Green Brigade or the boys or the various different groups, I see them more as these are your kind of dedicated supporters. There's the ones that bring the atmosphere. They get involved in a lot of initiatives related to the club or the community. And by the way, they do a lot of good as well. There we go, Kev's on as well.
Can I just say, I'm just going to interject for a moment, right? You're talking about ultras. Look at these ultras that I'm sitting with today. Didn't even invite them, didn't even get the clarion call out because they've been working so hard this week, yet they'll jump in anyway. Kev, welcome to the show, my man. How are you doing?
You're right, lads. What's actually happening? You're right.
And he's wearing the Acsom colours. He's got the merch on.
Look at that.
Love it. The bigger the shamrock, the better. I've got a feeling. Sorry, Chris, I'm going to get back into your lane in a minute. I've got a feeling about this March. You know how Celtic do their 4th kit? And it's like the kit that we never wore, but it's always a kit that looks like a football jersey. So the best, in my view, was the green and white hoops that had the white badge, and it just, it would have sold.
Lovely.
I mean, it sold out, but it would have sold zillions if we had actually worn the thing. Previous to that, we had the, was it called the Heritage jersey, which was launched over in Ireland. Previous to that, did we have one, or has it just been running for 2 years, guys? Keep me right. I don't know much about football kits. Just keep me right on this one, right? So if this is a 3rd year, I think that there is an opportunity for us to go right back to that old 60s shamrock top. White body, green sleeves, that big, massive shamrock. on the breast, right? And everything else can get whited out and greenied out or whatever you want to call it. But that jersey would sell by the bucket load. And I think we are aiming towards that kind of match thing with St Patrick's Day and our Irish fan base. Right, what do you think, lads? Would you buy it?
I would. I think so, yeah. It'd be that's similar to the one that wore for the St Rock's game, right? It's
that jersey.
Yeah, it's that jersey, yeah.
Jersey.
And that looked phenomenal on some of those older players as well. So yeah, I'd be completely up for that. I think that's a cracker. It'd be good. I think there seems to be a real push for nostalgia at the moment as well. You know, we're because maybe we're.
That's why I've got you two guys on the show.
Yeah, nostalgia. Yeah, but I think that there is. You see how the retro jerseys are going down. You know, they bring back some of those memories. Certainly, you know, amongst those of us of a certain vintage, shall we say, and we're all around about that age. You know, so it's we remember the Martin O'Neill era as we go back to the 90s. You've got the centenary years. You've got the Bumblebee top, which Jota has brought back into kind of the equation as well. Then you've got some of the goalie tops. You've got the old away tops, which had some kind of radical designs. You know, you remember the lesser known one that was kind of people's jersey and stuff like that. You know, so there's a lot of I think there's a lot of interest in nostalgia, and somebody brought a book about it fairly recently, the old Celtic jersey, which is brings back the nostalgia effect. But I think so. I think that some of the designs on the shirts haven't been great recently. There's been some divisive ones. The snake skin or the lizard print one that was out a year or two ago. Definitely divided opinion. Kind of grew on me a little bit, but it wasn't. I don't think it was one of the more there wasn't a lot of affection towards that particular variant, so a lot of people kind of moved towards the anniversary jersey, as you talked about, the one with the white out badge, which was much more kind of traditional hoops. So I think there's definitely a market there, and there's definitely an appetite for them. But I think it's also a good way to connect with our history as well.
Oh, it definitely is. I'm going to pull up a picture from that St Rock's game. I'm just deciding, do you want to see a picture of John Hughes, Wee Joe, Rudy Vata? Who do you want to see? Scott McDonald. Who do you want to see sporting the jersey?
Tosh McKinley as well was there, wasn't he?
Tosh was in there. Right, I'm going to actually bring up. There's a
Bobby Petter.
Bobby was fighting that day.
He nearly had a battle in the park.
Okay, right. I'll bring these up as we discuss it. Kev, we're talking about the Ultras, and I cut Chris off mid-sentence. Chris was talking about the great work that the Ultras do. Obviously, there has been the statement from Celtic today, and the line that they reiterate is pyrotechnics have absolutely no place at our matches. Now, Kev, you and I have been talking about the Ultra movement since the day we started Acsom, really. It's a movement that, in isolation, I'm really interested in it. I think Chris makes a great point. There needs to be a differentiation between hooliganism and the old the casual scene, right?
The casual scene, yeah.
Yeah, because hooliganism was part of the casual scene, right? They met up for rucks and all the rest of it. We've all seen ID, right? Gumbo.
And that was my point. It's making sure that we're terming the Ultras in the right context, because I want to make that clear. I'm not viewing the Ultras as casuals, but I think there was definitely a connection back in the day that Ultras meant casuals or hooligans.
It'd be interesting to know if anyone has transferred from being a casual to an Ultra. I don't know. I think that was one of the biggest issues when they landed on the scene, if you like, Kev. The fact that the authorities, and I'm talking police authorities, Scottish football authorities, and probably the club, couldn't really differentiate between the two. They got scared of the fact that, oh, wait a minute, we've got organised groups of fans here in football grounds.
Look, I think it's just a youth trend. And even though the Ultra in Europe it's been more prevalent than what it has been when the first Ultra group in Scotland was the Red Ultras with Aberdeen, who were based on the Bayern Munich ones, and it's a sort of culture that's came across from Germany. The more sort of darker side, what you might say, has come from Italy, where it was the defending your bell tower, you were defending your city, and stuff like that. I don't think there'll be many casuals or new Ultras because of the age, but it's just the same as in the 60s, in the 50s you were a teddy boy, in the 60s you were a mod, you were a rocker, you were a punk, you were a skin, you're a casual, you're now an Ultra. It's just a youth movement. I actually did notice that the Celtic soccer crew banner was at Villa Park, actually. First time I've seen that for a wee while, So,
Are
look,
they now the Grey Brigade? Are they getting on a wee bit, Kev?
they'll
By the way, if you're
be with
listening in, I don't want a rock. I mean,
no,
guys,
no, definitely no.
Well,
No, I think it's just a youth movement, and it brings colour and noise to the stadiums. It's a game with any youth movement. I can look back to my youth and the front page of the Sun about acid house parties, and you have a look at the skinheads all fighting with the mods at Brighton Beach and all of that. It's just they want to control folk. They just want to control. That's all it is. Look, I'm going to go on a wee bit of a tangent here. You've all seen the videos of the ultras all fighting in these woods in Poland and in Germany and all of that. And I think you see if all these wee guys want to do that, go and be serious about it and go and do it in a field somewhere rather than running up and down Sauchiehall Street. Like, just take it out. If you want to prove how hard you are, go and do it like the Polish and the Germans and that do it, right? I didn't like that side of it. I love the culture. I love the colour and the culture that they actually bring to the stadium. Celtic Park needs it. We've got used to the Green Brigade being there in that corner, so we do actually need it now. I completely disagree with the club's stance on pyrotechnics, but that's because we're not looking for a solution there. But the fact is, it's still illegal in Scottish stadiums, so I haven't really got much argument until that law changes. But they can look at Scandinavia and a whole host of other places. Instead of demonising this culture, they've tried to embrace it. And they've maybe tried to water it down a wee bit, but there's a whole thing out there. But it's just typical Scotland,
See that what you were saying there, Kevin. This might initially sound a bit bizarre, but I think it would be necessary for us to move forward with it. Is they're very organised. That's the first thing I would say. So there will be people within each of the ultra groups who are, if you like, I don't know what their title would be, but the heads of those groups. There'll be a hierarchy for each of the groups, and it is for me all about engaging with these people. And you know what, right? I think JP Taylor does a phenomenal job as the SLO. But I'm going to go back to that interview that you did years ago, Kev, where you spoke to 2 of, I believe, 6 or 7 Feyenoord SLOs.
Guys,
and you spoke to 2 of them. But at that time, they had 6 or 7. They've probably got more now. And it would be a case for me of saying, right, there is a dedicated ultra liaison officer. By the way, I'm putting Kev forward for the job, but there would be a dedicated liaison officer who is not. It's really to build the bridges, so there's not an us and them kind of set up, Kev, whereby they would be living and breathing what the ultras are doing, right? But they would be basically almost like a representative, if you like, when they are speaking directly with the football club. I know that there's a charter because they were speaking about that before. And there's an agreement between the Green Brigade and the football club. But I just think a head, employed by Celtic, by the way, who is basically a go-between. I think you need that, Kev, in order for us to engage and move forward with this.
I think we need to. I mean, I was thinking back there to me interviewing the guys for Feyenoord and what they do, and it's like they didn't ban folk for stadium. They bring them in and they rehabilitate them and they get them involved in community projects around about Feyenoord and that. If I go back and they teach them if they're going to have pyro, then there's safe pyro and how they use it, and there's a bit of engagement here, and I do think there needs to be that wee bit of engagement happening. I think UEFA are hypocrites. I really do think they're absolute hypocrites with a lot of things that they actually do. If you look at the clubs who have had away bans, I actually wrote this down because it jumped out at me.
Is that next to your vegan comment yesterday, Kev, which went down a storm?
I know.
How Kev got Palma and vegan sausage in the same sentence, I'll never know, but it worked.
I did see that in the comments. I was like, what are the guys talking? The guy's been talking about?
Young as well. So the 4 clubs that have had away bans, right, are Transponsor for Turkey, a team for Croatia, FC Gallen, and FC Copenhagen. No big clubs there, We've seen Bayern Munich light up the whole stadium. We've seen Borussia Dortmund light up the whole stadium on numerous occasions. We've seen loads of Italian clubs light up stadiums, but the 4 that have only had away bans are wee clubs.
Interesting, Kev. Does that mean that in terms of their representation when it comes to the hearing, if you like, the disciplinary hearing with UEFA, what do they call it now? There's a name for their group. It's the UEFA Control, Ethic and Disciplinary body. That's what it is that you're dealing with. So if Celtic are getting called up to that, they're going in tooled up with representation, whereas the weird clubs maybe aren't. Do you think it comes down to that? It's a money thing.
It maybe does. If you look at the clubs there, there's no. Copenhagen have got a large travelling support because they've got that sort of culture. And it could probably be a case, but there's no other big clubs get a away support banned. It'll be interesting what happens with the Eintracht Frankfurt fans, who, when they were at Roma last week, they were actually throwing the pyros and the fireworks into the home section.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting what actually happens there, because you have seen it. You can get controlled smoke, you can get controlled pyros, and I think that's what we need to maybe have a look at. It doesn't bother me, but I've got no respiratory problems and I love the way it looks. I love Italian football, and when that came into Scottish football, I went, that's maybe what we actually need. And I've embraced it. We've all had like we run-ins with things that have happened with the Green Brigade and the boys such and such. We've all got our views on that as well. But I think the overall they bring good things to Celtic.
Yeah.
And this thing last week at Villa Park, as far as I've seen, it was one guy with one smoke bomb who was pictured and quite easily identified. So it wasn't as if it was a display. It wasn't as if like it was a display in Zagreb. It wasn't as if we had a banner with FUF or anything like that. It was a one. It was like Celtic could probably quite rightly argue, and probably did quite rightly argue, by the way, there's nothing we can do about that.
Like one person, yeah.
Nothing we can do about that. It wasn't the group that we've told not to do it. They didn't actually do it. And you look at Scotland, again, a wee bit bedwetting. When you look at the like Argentina, Boca Juniors, and all of that, the stadium that's on 4 sides and it's exploding everywhere, and that. We could just get health and safety officers having heart attacks.
There was a game. Send them. Yes, because the SFA, for example, they scour the Americas when they're looking for heads of refereeing. So send them along. See, when we were at I think it was the Aberdeen semi-final, I'm going to say, and someone turned around to me after the fireworks went off on the pitch. Kev, you remember that? And it was like you could feel the heat. Now, again, I'm the same as Kevin. It's like visually, I'm looking at it visually, Chris. It doesn't affect me in terms of my health. But I respect the fact that it does affect other people. The smoke does affect other people. But someone turned around to me and said, right, there's fireworks, they blazing things that come out, the small containers at the beginning of the game and all the rest of it. And you can feel the heat sitting, God knows how many rows back. So it is all about engagement. You've got to drop the hypocritical nature of it. And you know what? I do think that we're kind of behind the curve. When it comes to the ultras, they have happened and we've never been able to manage them, and I think that's been the biggest issue, Chris. And there's an us and them in terms of authority, ultra, and you know what, we need to bridge the gap.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, I think there's still this perception in some quarters that the ultras are just a bunch of daft wee laddies, and they don't have structure and they don't have organisation and they don't have anyone that could act as that liaison, and they are looked down on, and I think that's completely wrong. And I think there needs to be a recognition by club members, by association members, to say, okay, let's talk about how you can enhance and augment all the great things about football as a spectacle. The atmosphere, the singing, the banners, the tifos, and if you want to do the something akin to fireworks, there are ways and methods you can do it. Kev's spoken about them, smokeless fireworks, you can do the soundless fireworks, that kind of thing. Make sure safety is absolutely a top priority. That there are people with respiratory problems. There are people who maybe get more affected by these things than others. So you have to take that into consideration. But ultimately, your way forward is to sit down and talk. And I think there has to be a willingness on both sides. I'll say that. I think at the same time, from the ultra side, I'm sure there's a bit of perception that the boards and the association are, perceived to be the old fuddy-duddies who are a bit inflexible and don't want things to change and don't want things to progress, and why would we collaborate with them and blah, blah, blah. So there does have to be a kind of coming together and a meeting of the minds a little bit. The potential is there. There needs to be a preparedness to compromise to an extent. The ultras maybe have to work with the club, for example, and say, if you want to do a political protest, for example, great, but we have to bear in mind that whether we agree with it or not, there may be a penalty coming the club's way. Okay, look, maybe there's something we can absorb. Maybe there's a different way to do it. Guys, maybe that's pushing it a wee bit. Can we maybe rein it in? But work together, right? Don't shut one side down or the other side. Make it work. And I think there needs to be transparency into the process, because I listened full enough the other day to Chris Sutton, and he's talking about now football associations maybe getting involved in how much players celebrate, for goodness sakes. You can't celebrate, you can't have a bit of banter against opposition players. Now, come on, football can't be sanitised to that level. It just can't. Otherwise, you're diluting everything that makes football good. You make that a spectator sport. Unless you want, as we always tell them, the prawn sandwich brigade sitting there, suited and booted up and watching a game and giving a polite wee clap. That's not football. Football's supposed to be the everyman game, the game that's accessible. And I know price-wise it's moving further away from that than ever. But, a lot of people, like you and me and all the guys in the comments and everybody that goes, they're just normal folks that want to go and watch their team and follow their team. And it plays a big part in their life. And so it should be all about the experience. It should always be about, the identity of the club and the identity of the fans and what it means. And
emotion.
Keep the passion and the emotion on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, emotion, passion, energy. And by the way, I think it was maybe Roy Keane that coined that prawn sandwich quote, and I think it's very unfair on prawns. I like a prawn, particularly a king prawn. So if I go for a Chinese king prawn with cashew nuts, guys, if you've not done it, get it with the fried rice. Nothing against the prawn. The prawn is good. But you were talking about collaborations, Kev. I know that. By the way, one last word on the Ultras. Kev done a brilliant interview on Acsom back in the day. It's in the archive. It's on the YouTube channel. Search for it, right? And it was the author of a book called Pirates, Punks and Politics. And it was all about a radical football club called FC St Pauli, which we all know were inspirational and influential in the birth of the Green Brigade and a lot of the things that the GB have done. I know that the relationship might have been affected recently in terms of it's just not there, is it? But back in the day, Kev, you interviewed the author of that fantastic book, and it is a fantastic. This was a Watford fan, right, who became disillusioned by modern football and decided that he added up, Kev, how can I justify going to see a football team that actually means something to me now, right? And he started going over to St Pauli, and I think it was maybe half a dozen games a season, Kev, and it cost the same as his Watford season ticket, and he became a St Pauli fan. And Kev interviewed him. His name is Nick Davidson. Go and check it out on the archive, Kev, because
he's actually done a follow-up to the book.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
There is a second book coming out, and he was saying that it's just missed their promotion. He finished it just before they got promoted to the Bundesliga, and obviously the stuff that happened with Palestine. So as far as I can kind of tell, I think he's a bit removed as well. He's a bit like the Glasgow St Pauli boys now.
Is he? Right, okay.
He's a bit removed. Just going back on it, there was a comment that came in from Magnet67. I know the guy who started the Red Ultras in the mid-1990s. He worked for Aberdeen now. They embrace their fan culture. Why don't our board politics, perhaps? And this is something that I was thinking about. Why is the Ultra liaison guy not an Ultra? Who knows what's gone through
exactly
their minds. Also, as well, if you've got organised pyrotechnic displays in the stand, then there's less chance of a wee somebody getting a flare and throwing it and hitting somebody's head. If that's a section where that's going to happen, then it's more controlled. There just needs to be more dialogue. That's all there needs to be.
That's a great shout, actually, because what better way of building the bridge, Kev, than having one of the people that you as an Ultra trust, and then basically he can go into that boardroom and he can have the meetings with the likes of the top brass at Celtic. So if Chris comes back in, we'll get him back on the show. He's a busy man. He jumped in to help us out. in this three-man midfield. I'll be talking about who is going to be making up my three-man midfield against Raith Rovers. But before I do that, we're talking collaborations. We're talking collaborations between ultras.
And also, I've got a box of smoke bombs that I haven't used yet. So,
but therefore, entertainment purposes, Kev, when we're filming the video of your next single, am I right? We're going to use them.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Right. We don't want Kev's shed getting raided. If Chris comes back in, that would be excellent. But I know that he was in the middle of doing something work.
Also, if somebody wants to make sure my shed doesn't get raided, does anybody in the Stirling area can put me in touch with a good fencer to sort my fences after the storms?
My brother's a fencer, Kev. Look
Is
no
he?
further. My brother's a fencer, man.
Give
Come
my
on.
phone. There we go.
There you go. There. Product placement dropped right in seamlessly. We're talking about collaborations, right? And I'm going to bring this up because we did speak about this several months ago, and it was about how to collaborate in such a way that we could get a big band on board for one of these commemorative March release jerseys. Now, I'm afraid to say Man City have nipped in there, Kev. They must have watched Acsom. They've nipped in there and they've stolen Oasis. So we've got Manchester United and the Stone Roses doing this on a jersey. We've got a whole range of merch that Man City and Oasis have just released today. Don't want to hear him singing again. If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, check out YouTube when he was a young guy. And there's the merch. So all a bit, tedious and a wee bit kind of like, for me, predictable. But I'm going to throw it out there because we did say Oasis would have been a good collab for Celtic back in the day, Kev. Who should be the band? Who should be the band that Celtic collaborates with? Kevin Graham, I'm going to ask you first.
Look, I would go really, really left field. And
Mogwai.
I would go really, really left field with Mogwai or Primal Scream or somebody like that. But then the majority of the Celtic fans would probably say somebody like the Wolf Tones or something like that.
Simple Minds.
Simple Minds could have been the best tour poster ever. Was Simple Minds at Ibrox. I mean, whoever came up with that, genius. Have a think about it. Simple Minds at Ibrox.
Absolutely. And didn't he get the tricolour? Did he not get the tricolour at Ibrox? Was that not part of the deal? I'll need to look into that. I remember the story.
I think it was part of it. I don't know. I don't think there's some folk in some of the comments are saying kneecap. Aye, that would work as well.
Oh yes.
that would definitely work. I don't think there's an obvious one. I think the only club in Britain that's got the obvious thing with is Oasis. As Man City and Oasis, I think that's the most obvious collaboration. I'm just wondering if what our wee guy for Microdot's saying about it.
Brian wasn't involved in the designs. I'll say that.
It's his logo, ain't it?
Yeah, he designed the logo. Yeah, and he gave us permission to use Acsom, which completely ripped off his logo. So we're cool there for any lawyers listening in today. But no, I would say Primal Scream are a great shout. Teenage Fan Club, Simple Minds. I think there's a lot. But Kneecap, if you're talking in the here and now, it would need to be Kneecap. You imagine the balaclavas, man. That would just
the
would
merch,
be all over
the merch
the
would
stadium. Kev, you're visualising it. Don't deny it.
Visualising it.
We spoke about the Shamrock jersey. A wee throwback, because it's Friday, not Thursday. A wee throwback to October 2 years ago, where Acsom brought together a group of ex-Celts to play in the St Roch Centenary game. We were managed by none other than Willie Hockey in the first half and Brendan Rodgers in the second half. No bad that, eh? We had John Clark in the dugout as well. This was a team that lined up, but wait a minute, that doesn't work. This is a team that lined up. I know, I need to put that as an overlay, which I will. I've just added it as a background. It looks pretty natty. But what I would say is that the team that lined up wasn't all the players who were involved. There was loads of other players who didn't get a start, right, who did line up for the team. I'm going to bring this up because it looks brilliant when you look at the actual kit. So here we go. Once that's loaded in. And then I'm going to share with you my favourite picture from that day. So there was the starting 11. What are you laughing at, Chris?
I'm looking at Scott McDonald. He could still be playing.
By the way, he was brilliant. He was brilliant that day. And what I've since found, lads, right, is these jerseys. This was Acsom merchandise that we used for the jerseys. We got them embroidered for the game, so there was like 15 jerseys in existence. Only 2 goalkeepers, and Jerry Taylor's got one of them. And these jerseys have been getting sold for big money on the market, you know, in the match-worn jersey scene. These jerseys have been going for big money. So the team that started the game, Scott Fox in goal, started his career at Celtic, went on to Dundee, ended up in Scotland squads, etc. Rudy Vata, one of my faves. John Hughes, look at Yogi, he looks fitter now than he did when he played. Tosh McKinley, Paul Byrne, Tommy Johnson, Joe Miller. We've got Davy Elliott down the front, Scott McDonald, Andy Payton, and Bobby Petter. But we had other players as well involved, like Chick Chanley was involved, wasn't he? We had also, which still blows my mind, Saul Davis out of the band, James Allen out of Las Vegas, and Big Ben's. Oh, it was just, what a day it was. But my favourite picture, and I'll need to upload this one as well, and credit to the photographer whose copyright is on these, by the way. Check this one out of John Hughes. That's stunning, isn't it? That is a stunning image. And that is, of course, the St Roch Centenary, and that is the jersey that I think we should launch or relaunch in March. Let's talk about some of the happenings, the incomings, the outgoings, and the 6 Celtic players that is going to see us through at the end of the season, Kev. I'm going to start off with Greg Taylor, lads. So it's the tale of 4 left-backs. Greg Taylor, it seems, will be leaving for pastures new, and it looks as though it's going to be Dynamo Zagreb. He obviously... I'll start with you, Kev. He obviously doesn't fancy playing second fiddle for all intents and purposes to Kieran Tierney when he arrives in the summer, and he's on his way out. You look at his trophy haul at the moment. I was looking at this morning. He's won 10 trophies for Celtic, with still the Scottish Cup in the league to play for this season. I mean, I think he's been a cracking servant over 6 seasons. He's only 27, 205 appearances, 9 goals, 32 assists. I like the idea of him as Katie's backup. He obviously doesn't.
I kind of grew to like that idea as well. He might have been fine if we had gave him the wages that he's looking for. He might have been fine with that deal on the table, but I think it's just come down to money, and I think it's going to come down to the fact that Celtic will only pay him what they class as a first choice wage for somebody that maybe get less game time. Mm-hmm. I kind of had a wee sneaking suspicion after the poor end to the transfer window that he might get his contract to appease Brendan, but obviously it was maybe too far down the road. It was obviously too far down the road, which just means that we're going to need to bring in another left back in the summer.
See, the problem with that, Kev, you mentioned that yesterday, right? And it was like the best solution, right? It really was. And you're solving the left back problem. You're, as you say, appeasing Brendan to a degree after the transfer window. But clearly what's happened, yesterday you mentioned it's the 6th of February, with the first week into February, he's already spoken to other clubs. We've put ourselves in that position where he can speak to other clubs. His agent knows what he can get elsewhere. And he's not going to stay here because, let's say, the figure was 25, the raw figure was 25 a week. He's been told he's getting it, and that's why he's going. It's that simple.
Or he's maybe getting more.
Potentially.
He's maybe getting more than the 25, so you do not know.
Because there's no transfer fee. You're right, Kev, there's no transfer fee now. So
he gets to... And look, we had an argument on the supporters bus on Wednesday night about this.
A good old-fashioned argument, face-to-face, on a CSC bus. I love it.
It was a good old-fashioned argument where guys were going, oh, this thing is a short career now, as a lie, because you've got guys that can play in their mid-30s, late 30s, and there are guys that are playing for 18 onwards. And I think my argument was right, that unless you are a generational talent, you have to sign your best contract between 27 and 28. So when you break into a first team, you've only got 9 years to get that contract, the biggest contract you're ever going to get at 27. And that's where Greg Taylor is at the moment. So, because after that, most players' value starts decreasing after that moment, unless you're an elite level player.
No,
so that's where you are. So yes, it is a short career to make sure you've done the best that you can to when you're 26, 27 to earn that contract, then the biggest contract you're ever going to earn. So I understand with folks say, oh, it's a longer career now. Yes, it is, but it's still a short career for you to maximise your earnings. If you get what I mean.
It's hard to argue with that. I think you're right, though, in terms of how it's changed. You're probably looking at maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, your football career would be 15 years. It's probably, edging up towards 20 now, Chris, at various levels, where you can get a wage for 20 years. But I think I'd agree with Kev, unless you're Ibrahimovic, Ronaldo, Messi, and quite a few others at the moment, actually. Buffon, for example, Kasper Schmeichel. You're not going to be playing at the top level, therefore your earning power's not going to be up there. But yeah, I think, the Greg Taylor situation, it seems as though he has spoken to other clubs and they've been like, no problem, 25, let's start talking. He's got his deal that he wants and he'll be away in the summer. It's unfortunate for us, but best move for him, perhaps, thinking about what Kev just said about the best contract he can get.
Yeah, I had no issue with the player. I think he's made the decision that's right for him. I think we couldn't give him or refuse to give him, a reasonable alternative. So he's perfectly within his rights. I think from a club and a supporters standpoint, it's a shame. I would have given him the money personally. I think he offers enough in our team to just about merit that wage. I think, given our financial position as well, for me, it seemed a no-brainer. The way I always look at these things is, you let the player go. You've got KT coming in, right? But if you've got to then pursue, because we don't know what the situation is with Schlupp, but you've then got to pursue another left back. Could you get a player of Greg Taylor's quality without spending more than you would have had to pay over the piece if you gave him his wage? To get a replacement at that level, and that's the element I can't understand, because look, Greg Taylor will have his critics. Some of them are justified in terms of certain areas of his game, but he brings a hell of a lot of good stuff to the table as well. And I think if you're looking to replace that or get even close to replacing that, okay, you might bring in a development player, but development players we've been kind of hit or miss with, right? Some have worked, some haven't. So your concern is that you go out there, you bring in a player, doesn't work, you let him go maybe a season later, try again, bring someone in, doesn't work, you let him go. And again, it's that continual outlay. Whereas you give Greg Taylor what he's looking for, you get him for, say, another 3, 4, 5 years. Another 3, 4, 5 years, you don't have to worry, because you've got a capable player in that position, a tried and tested, proven, adaptable player. Now, there is an issue. Does he want to be the number one left back? We're bringing Kieran Tierney in. He's going to want to be the number one left back. Well, I'd kind of see that as a good problem for the manager. Manage the expectations. We're playing in every competition, including Europe's top table, hopefully, if we qualify. So you're thinking there's going to be opportunities for two players to get a decent amount of game time there. And with Kieran, as much as I don't like to dwell on it, with Kieran's injury history, there's no way Greg Taylor's not going to get opportunities to play when Kieran comes in. Absolutely not. I mean, he will absolutely be depended on. So I can't understand why the club, if this is the case, and we don't know the ins and outs, but if the club haven't been prepared to go to the wage that he wants and offer him the deal and the assurances he wants, I think it's a huge loss. And I think it's one we will struggle to replace.
Yeah, he's seen them all off. Bolingoli. He's seen off Alexandro Bernabe. Also, what was his name? I keep forgetting his name. I airbrush it out my mind. The Uruguayan left back with the braids.
Laxalt. They go Laxalt, the dreads and the glasses.
Seen him off. Yeah. Erased him from my memory. And now we've got Schlupp. Well, we talked about his performance. I agreed with you, Kev. I agreed with you yesterday, actually, about your analysis of his performance. He's like one of the guys, he comes in, you're thinking to yourself, there's a whole plethora of players down in England who could step into this league and just be really comfortable, and you know what I mean, and you could maybe say he's no great at this because he doesn't know the guys on the park, but that'll all come within the next few weeks. He's one of the dependable players. You look at his career, the games that he's played at that level, Kev, we're going to be absolutely fine with him as a backup till the end of the season.
Well, as I say, he was running about the park yesterday, getting shouted at, going, "Who's that? What's your name?" And he's completely thrown in, and he looked a wee bit out of sorts. But I would expect that. That's why you bring him on when you're 4-0 up in a game like that, just to give him the feel of Celtic Park, and known full well that he's not up to speed. Knowing full well that he doesn't know the way that we want the fullback to play. It's just to go out there and give him that feel. Go and make your debut in an unpressurised situation, and on you go and do it. With regards to Greg Taylor, just going back the way, Chris is right. We will never get anybody with the experience of Greg Taylor to replace him. And now, well, obviously Tierney's coming, but for what we're looking for in that backup role, and obviously you've got this other point that can get made quite clearly now. For me, it can get made quite clearly. Rodgers wants him to stay, and somebody in the boardrooms went, "No, we're not paying that."
That's a danger.
So they're questioning the manager's judgment, which should not happen by an accountant.
No, I agree with that. I totally agree with that, and I agree with some of the comments coming through.
It doesn't matter what we say here about Greg Taylor's ability or not. Rodgers wants him to stay, and we've got somebody who deals with the contracts going, "Nah, I didn't agree with that."
I know, and that's a problem. And Rodgers has said it in a number of press conferences, isn't he, Kev? We talk about left backs, the 4 left backs, the tail of it. Taylor's going to be the first choice till the end of the season. Schlupp, I think, the adaptability of that player as well. You know what I mean? If you've got an issue on the left, if you've got an issue up top, you can throw him on. So it's a shrewd move. I think it's a shrewd move by Brendan, and it's clearly been kind of pushed on by Brendan Rodgers. And then, of course, Adam Montgomery, he's away for his 5th loan spell. But I look at, he's obviously taken a step down to Queen's Park, right? He's taken a step down a division to Queen's Park. He might make his debut at Ibrox this weekend. I don't see a way back for him, Kev. I mean, you know, he was a player that I actually thought under Ange at spells looked okay. He looked decent, like he might be able to have that physical transformation where he piles on the muscle and becomes a contender. But with every passing season and injury, it's got to be said, because he's been unlucky with that, it seems further and further away from, he seems further and further away from being a first-team player for me, Kev.
It does. I'll go back to when he was at loan at St Johnstone. I've mentioned quite on here, I've got a pal who watches St Johnstone home and away, and he loved him as a football player. He says that boy will make it. He says, I don't know if he'll make it with yous. He says, but we would take him back in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the best players in their team. He was very, very decent. So the
I
guys
think St Johnstone were in for him, Kev. I think they were back in for him. St Johnstone.
That's what we heard on Monday. Then it just sort of fell away. Next thing you know, he's joining Queen's Park.
Mm-hmm.
As you say, it's quite a strange move. If St Johnstone want him, you would have thought if you were trying to develop him to see how he does in the next 4 months, then then he would have ended up at St Johnstone in the top flight in a relegation battle, basically, to see how he handles it, rather than going to Queen's Park. So it doesn't bode. The optics didn't bode well for him.
You wish him well. We seem to have that relationship with Queen's Park, Chris. There's been a few players gone to Queen's Park on loan over the years. A couple of others knocked back the opportunity to do that and have since left the football club. The most recent one being, of course, Dane Murray going out there, coming back. So, you know, maybe they've used Dane Murray as an example and said, look, you can go there and you can come back to the first team squad. I mean, when you, as Kev says, when you look at the optics, like you go, he's stepping down, and it's maybe like his next step away from the football club, but not necessarily, because Dane Murray came back and he's played in Europe for us this season.
Yeah. Although we'll probably not mention that too much detail, that particular appearance. But I think that you're right. The challenge for Celtic and the challenge for these players going to Queen's Park is that you have to show them that there's a way back. There needs to be a precedent set to say, look, okay, it's a step down a division, but is it a better level than the B team? Well, I would say yes. And it has to lead to something, right? I mean, this is the issue we're in, because the situation we're in, because there's no reserve league. Right, as a reserve league, you've got multiple options to develop these players and give them experience to, against playing against better opposition. But the B team doesn't offer that at the moment. So they go to Queen's Park, but you do need someone like the Dane Murray situation. It can't just be a one-off appearance in Europe or a one-off appearance for the first team. What you need other players to see is guys like Dane Murray getting minutes, coming on and actually showing that he's got the capability to step up in the first team, and the development he's had at the club like Queen's Park is actually paying off. Because then that sets the precedent, and players, other young players think, okay, if I go there and I do well, the club are prepared to then give me an opportunity when I come up. Yeah. So it can't just be a check the box exercise. It has to be a case of you say to the players, look, there's the example, there's the Dane Murray or whoever it might be. Say they came back. and the manager liked what he saw, could see the improvement, and he put them into the team, and they got opportunity, and they're building on that, and so on and so forth. So you're looking for players to say, okay, Gaffer, I'm prepared to go out there on loan, give it my best shot, throw my effort, do well for that club, and hopefully then you'll take a look at me and give me a chance when I come back. What you don't want is a perception they go to Queen's Park and they're just putting themselves in the shop window for their next move, which will not be at the level of Celtic. So that's the way I would view the pathway. That buzzword, that pathway in the role of the pathway manager, the pathway team, is to say, okay, your best path to get into the first team is to go to one of these kind of unofficial affiliated clubs, do well there, and we'll take a look at you. Because you're still challenging the player to go and play at a decent level and really stand out in the team. And Queen's Park's a good platform to do that. But I think we need more of that. We need more options to send clubs out to that level, get them playing competitively week in, week out. You'd expect our youth players to be at a decent level because of the training, because of the facilities we've got and the programs we've got. So it is a good opportunity for them to go and showcase, because the B team at the moment is just I just view it as a limbo area. They're there, but that's it.
I don't think it will continue, but we need an alternative, Chris. You're right. I'm going to bring in some of these comments, some great suggestions coming in for the band Celtic should hook up with. But Billy Hasty is supporting the channel. Good afternoon to you. Happy Friday. The next time you see us at Bad, yes, I will sign your book. If you haven't bought it, though, don't buy it. Just come and see us. Come and see us and we'll give you it for your wee boy's birthday. We've got a gig at the end of this month, Billy, if you want to come along to that. Johan Mialby. And then we'll be at Bad for Martin O'Neill next month. But as I say, if you don't see me, go and speak to somebody at the merch stall and just tell them. And we'll get it sorted out for you, mate. Now, we've also got Gordon Coney here. Afternoon, lads. Today's my 40th, and my wife has surprised me with a trip to Vegas at the end of May to the Celtic convention. Can't wait. Kev, have you ever been to a convention over there?
No. Vegas is one place I've never really fancied going.
I know, but seeing the mad days, like the crazy days where you would go to the football and come back on a Tuesday and stuff, do you never fancy the Vegas convention?
No, I never did. The reason being, I spent 9 months on a supporters bus a season. And when I was going on holiday, I didn't really want to go anywhere that would resemble the 9 months that I spent on a supporters bus going home and away. So I was like, I would go as far away as possible.
Yeah, I quite fancy it. I quite fancy taking Acsom at some point. Patrick, Doherty,
of course, if we're going on a jolly, I mean, I can like, that was back then. I'm reformed now.
Yeah.
I'll maybe turn up for the first gig, but the other 3 or 4, you might be lucky to see me.
Hey, your band might be able to play as part of it, mate. There we go. Patrick Doherty, Munich, here we come. Yes. And just randomly, Uncle Nobby Steamboat, salt and pepper ribs. Why not? I don't know if you're still talking about carry-out food. Paddy Lavery quite rightly says, Kev, you are always right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just coming in and making a statement, Paddy. That for me, is a good statement to make. And at least you're leaving Jerry Taylor alone. Plunge McNugget, the silencers. Now, can I just say, right, and I've already told this tale, and I told it a few Fridays ago when Jinky Gilmore appeared on This Is Acsom. The Silencers were a band I became aware of when my old man had to work abroad, and I can't remember where he was, somewhere in Europe, Norway, Denmark, France, something like that. Maybe France, because the Silencers were big in France. And he come home with Silencer CDs, right? Never heard of them. He also came home with Midnight Oil CDs, by the way, Beds Are Burning and all that. But it was the Blues for Buddha album, right? And he put it on, and it was the soundtrack for so long in our house. I love the Silencers. And I know that particular album came before Jinky joined the band. But see, since that interview a few Fridays ago, I have been listening, Plunge, to the Silencers non-stop. What a superb Scottish band. Yes, Jamie O'Neill, also a Celtic fan. Plunge also throws in Texas. I would love to interview Charlene Spiteri. That would be a tremendous...
I believe she is a Celtic fan, yeah. I believe she's affiliated to Celtic, yeah.
Ah, big time, yes. Ryan Nacelle, be ashamed to lose Greg, been a brilliant servant. And Jim Kerr, this is a good one. And Jim's band isn't bad either. But Jim Kerr, the other Jim Kerr, says, the Bluebells, name's no great, but they are the good guys. Yes, they are.
These names are great, absolutely fantastic names, but there's no an iconic logo like the Oasis logo. And I think that the only one that's got another iconic logo is the Primal Scream.
The Scream with the Paul Cannell sunburst. Yeah.
I'm shocked.
So-
Shocked. Neither of you have mentioned Kevin McDermott Orchestra. I mean, come on, guys.
Well, that goes without saying, doesn't it? Kev, of course. I would have Kev every day of the week. Now, we're talking now, obviously moving on. I was going to say about Kasper Schmeichel, I would still start on this weekend, gents, right? Because this is the type, again, I'm not speaking for Jim, but Jim has suggested previously for cup games such as the one we've got this weekend against lower league opposition. And Raith Rovers have not been any great shake since Ian Murray left the football club under bizarre circumstances. That you've got to give Sinisalo a game. You've got to see Sinisalo in action at some point, Chris. When are we going to see this goalie? Probably not this weekend, though.
It's a difficult one because I always remember Kasper's dad talking. I watched a Man United documentary years ago, and it was Kasper talking about he felt to keep his fitness up, particularly as he got older. He wanted to play every single match. He didn't like being left out for cup games, and obviously Kasper's at at the age now where he's probably maintaining his fitness is probably priority. So I can understand the reasons for keeping Kasper in, because goalkeepers, I think they don't do the running about and the exertion that a lot of the outfield players do. So keeping that sharpness, keeping that concentration level up is is key. And look, he's been important. With that said, to counter that point, we've seen a lot of teams down south do that. They'll play their second choice keeper in most of their cup games. I think Liverpool did it with Kelleher for quite a bit, and I think it did help his development. Sinisalo at the moment, we're quite excited to see what he could do when he came to the club, quite highly rated, but we've not seen really anything from him. He's not had the opportunities, and that's by virtue of how Kasper's played. But what you don't want is another Scott Bain, just somebody who's there and thereabouts. You want somebody that's going to be sharp enough and capable enough when they're called upon. And goalkeepers can get injured just the same as every other player. So I think it's an early enough round in the cup. It's, with the greatest respect to Raith Rovers, it's probably the type of profile match I would put Sinisalo in. But at the same time, you do want to keep your keeper sharp, particularly with the big game that's coming up.
Well, Schmeichel gets my vote, but absolutely every point you make is correct. If he gets injured, if Schmeichel gets injured before the game against Bayern Munich, you're having that inhalation of breath. The worry is there.
Absolutely.
Benzo is no longer driving the bus and playing cards. So it's a bit of a concern. But what I was going to say to you guys, right? We always talk about Peter Schmeichel because he was an iconic goalkeeper. Can you name me 3 other Celtic goalkeepers whose fathers were professional footballers, not necessarily in goals? So the other night I was thinking about this when I was watching Kasper no doing much, and I thought to myself, everybody goes on about Peter for obvious reasons, but we've had other goalkeepers whose dads were also pro footballers. So can you think of them? Come on, lads. And I'll see if Gordon Marshall, that's a great shout, because his old fella passed away just a few days ago, Kev. His old dad was 85. He was also a goalkeeper. He played with Celtic.
Was he? I thought he was a midfield player.
He was a goalie. He played with Newcastle. He was a bit of a legend at Hearts. And he was at one season at Celtic. His old man played in Europe. So yeah, Gordon Marshall, Kasper Schmeichel. There's another 2 I can think of. I'm not saying it's a definitive list, but I can think of 4 Celtic goalies whose dads also played football. There's one really obvious one, lads, and you've got to get it. You've got to get it.
Not going to be Bonner, so I'm thinking further back, thinking, going to be the Lions, Ronnie Simpson.
Kasper wasn't doing much. Well done, JJ. Ronnie Simpson's dad played for Rangers.
Jonathan Gould.
Bobby Gould.
Of course, yeah. Bobby Gould, yeah.
There you go. So there's your 4. There might be more. Let us know in the comment section. Right, lads, I'm just going to read through the team that I would start against Raith Rovers. Let me know your thoughts, your changes, etc. And if you need to nip away, I'll finish this off after times because I know you are working. I'm playing Kasper Schmeichel in goals, right? With the caveat of, it's about time we gave Sinisalo a game. I'm playing Tony Ralston at right back. I want Johnson fit and firing for the midweek game. I'm playing Schlupp at left back for the same reason. And in the middle, I've got Trusty and Scales. So I would rest our first choice left back and centre half. In the midfield, I'm going with Engels, McKeown and Hatate, and I'm resting Callum McGregor. And then up top, I'm going Jota, Kuhn and Maeda. And the reason for that is I'm resting Ida, because if he gets injured, we have an issue against Bayern Munich. That's my team. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, I don't think there's much I would change about that. I wonder if is it too soon to give Dane Murray a start ahead of maybe a Trusty or Scales. I think I'd probably partner him up with Scales because I think Scales is more experienced in the team than Trusty. So I'm thinking I might possibly swap Trusty out for Dane Murray because I think you'd like to think we'd be on the front foot in this match. Agree with resting Callum McGregor. Hatate I'd probably play because I think he benefits from regular game time in the midfield, so I'd probably agree with that. McCowan definitely. I think he'll step up. Good game for him. I totally agree on Ida. It's just whether or not. So you'd play Jota and you play Kuhn, rest Maeda as well. No, actually, there's no point.
I'm
play
resting Maeda
because
yeah,
because you play Maeda, wouldn't you? Because he's suspended for the first leg against
and
Bayern.
I'd also like to see him playing centre forward because I think it's an opportunity for us to do that.
It's a good opportunity, but it's a good opportunity for Kenny as well because we can't rely on Maeda for the match. So I'm wondering, do you try and give Kenny the opportunity to get a few goals, get his sharpness and his confidence up as well? That's maybe the only difference I would make. I wouldn't play Kuhn. I'd leave Kuhn out because if he gets injured, you've got real problems on the wing. So I would probably play Maeda and Jota. Jota needs the minutes, and I'd play Kenny up front.
I see what you did there. I understand why you did it as well. I mean, the 6 players that I was talking about earlier, I'm just going to read through them rather than dig in. I'll probably dig in tomorrow or over the weekend. Dyson Maeda obviously hitting unbelievable form. 33 appearances, 18 goals, 8 assists. Nicholas Kuhn on the other wing, 33 appearances, 17 goals, but 12 assists. Jota, he's just shown us that he will get up to fitness and he will contribute. Adam Ida, 4 goals in 3 games. The big man's on fire. Arnie Engels, just have a look at every single thing I've said about Engels all season. He's living up to it. Rio Hatate coming to that point where he's actually performing and he's doing the things that we love seeing him do. They're the 6 for me that, regardless of what happened in the transfer window, well, they guys, if they play to the form that they're on just now, will see us through. But I want it all to click against Rangers because that last game against Rangers, too many big names did not turn up. Kev, that's you right. Nipped away. I'm just going to give you my starting 11. You can agree, disagree, or throw things at the screen. It's Schmeichel, Ralston, Schlupp, Trusty, and Scales, Engels, McCowan, and Hatate, Jota, Kuhn, and Maeda. How do you start against Raith Rovers?
I don't disagree with that apart from Schlupp. I don't think it'll be much different. I think he will play Taylor to start off with, then he'll bring on the big fella, hopefully quite early doors in the second half to bring him up time. He will
to learn his teammates' names.
To learn his teammates' names. You have to give Jota more minutes, don't you? To try and get him up to speed. I didn't really disagree with that apart from the left back. That's I would say aye.
Absolutely. And look at that. There's the final comment I'm going to bring up. I love Celtic, my heroes forever. Don't we all? Absolutely. Now, thank you all for joining me, and thank you to these 2 guys for jumping in when they were both working. Kevin Graham and Chris McElwain. Join us half an hour before kick-off over the weekend on A Celtic State of Mind.